But I think we have to start with the major story of the day, which is the early results that we're getting from the union fight in Bessemer, Alabama. For folks who are unfamiliar, though I'm sure most people at this point know what's going on, the workers in Bessemer, Alabama have been organizing to form a union. That union move has been met with some of the most egregious, and if I'm going to be completely frank with folks, illegal, likely illegal tactics from Amazon, along with incredible amounts of money poured into the area to prevent people from making sure that they get fair wages, that they are not forced to do things like piss in bottles, to make sure that people have the dignity that they deserve, because those are the people who are making the profits that line the pockets of the wealthiest man in the world. Now, what we've been seeing early on has not been particularly inspiring for a successful vote. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about why we should not lose hope, and some of the tactics that Amazon has used. But let me say this right now. If we had the PRO Act passed, and remember, the PRO Act is essentially just a law that is returning a lot of the rights that the union movement had won already back into place. If we had the PRO Act, then the workers at Amazon would already be represented by a union. The reason that all of these corporations, and the reason that we're seeing such hesitance even from the Biden administration for passing the PRO Act, is that it would be a landmark shift in the ability of workers to form unions in this country. As it exists now, forming a union in the private sector is extremely hard. And it allows corporations like Amazon to bring in all these hired guns who are, frankly, experts at making sure that people are as confused as possible about what a union represents. And again, we're going to be, and it's not just Amazon. Like, we're going to be talking a little bit with Nathan Bernard, who broke down what's going on in Maine, where nurses are trying to form a union as well. Right? This is a huge industry, but it can't be overstated just how powerful Amazon is, and a lot of the tactics that they've been using to prevent this, a yes vote to come into play. These tactics have been quite egregious. But I guess, should we start with the vote, just so everybody knows what we're talking about? Remember, for folks who are going to be listening later, actually, let me just say this real quick. It's April 8th. It's 7:08 p.m. in Central Time. We don't know what the end results are going to be. Amazon has challenged the ballots of a few hundred votes. And remember, this is a pool of around like 3,000 voters. So it's a significant amount of votes that are sort of being held up right now. Amazon wouldn't be challenging votes that are no's. So it's very likely that those votes that are being held up are yes votes. That being said, what we're seeing from the early results is almost a 2-to-1 no to yes ratio. Do we have that New York Times update handy?
Yeah, I have it up there right now.
Okay. Yeah, so what we're seeing right now, as of April 8th, I don't have it up in front of me, so I can't read it to y'all. But it's
Yeah,
about
I'll read it
twofold.
here. With about half the ballots counted late Thursday, votes against unionization had more than 2-to-1 advantage over those in favor, according to a live broadcast of the counting that was tallied by the New York Times. And I should note that there was other tallies going on. The Alabama local paper was doing it too. When the counting paused, there were more than 1,100 votes against unionization and 463 in support. The incomplete tally put Amazon on the cusp of defeating. Yeah.
So let's start with a couple quick things, right? So when this initiative first happened, Amazon increased the pool of people who would need to be covered by the union. They did that for a very tactical reason, was to disperse essentially the groups of folks who were going to be voting in the election, right? So that they could target certain groups to prevent them from being able to coalesce together, right? Because you have people who aren't interacting with each other on a regular basis. But they were able to get something close to about 3,000 cards in. in favor of unionization originally. And again, if the PRO Act were law today, that would mean that they would have a union and they would have union representation, which just underlines how important that legislation could be for the union movement, and why, if you have the opportunity to, it's something that's very important to lobby for. But I wanted to say, as we're seeing these results come in, we don't know what the end result will be. From some of I saw that Kim Kelly, who is a great reporter on this, was saying that some of her sources were saying that some of the information that they've gotten seems to indicate that many of the voters put those ballots in February, which means that all of the media blitz, the Bernie Sanders appearance, all those things,
Joe Biden
um,
come lately.
Joe Biden come lately, basically happened after a significant amount of people had already voted. All right. Again, we don't know what the end result's going to be, but we just want people to understand what's going on there. But let's talk about what the long-term deal is for this unionization move. There is almost 100% going to be a challenge, because Amazon put their finger on the scale in extremely egregious ways, from encouraging people who were contract workers, who weren't going to be people who were going to be voting in this, to wear anti-union signs, to be able to pull people in to meetings where they explained what the union is, right? Where they had Amazon paid shills come in and basically lie about what a union is and what it represents. And make sure that people were not able to get the information. For example, that warehouse workers in the surrounding area who are represented by unions make significantly more money than the people at these Amazon facilities do, right?
Yeah, and those sorts of captive audience meetings are bad and shouldn't be allowed at any point. But it's also, especially as we'll talk about with Nathan, during coronavirus, when these people are already like completely like worked to the bone, that you're going to make them basically scare them about their jobs,
Mm-hmm.
is horrible.
And that's exactly what it is. Plus, the really difficult task that we have on the left today and in the labor movement across the board is to convince people that there's something, that we can do something, right? Because a lot of people are fearful, and this is why this kind of work is so difficult. I'm not a union organizer. I don't go in and have these conversations with folks, but I know enough people around me to understand what that kind of experience of precarity is like, and why a lot of people don't think that, politics or organizing is something that can change their lives. Many people just say, I'm going to go in, put my head down, and just be happy that I have a paycheck at the end of the day. And that is a scenario that Amazon takes advantage of, not just on the shop floor, but also politically, that the gutting of public services, the gutting of workers' rights, allow them to take advantage of people, because people know if you lose your job in this society, you are going to be thrown to the wolves, right?
Yeah,
And they take advantage, and they have an active interest in maintaining that system.
they love
That
it.
being that being said, the state, at least on a theoretical level, is something that should be open game for us to be able to win and to utilize to our advantage. The problem right now is that the state, both local government in Alabama and also national government in the United States, is not particularly inclined to help out workers, especially if it means structural reforms. And do you have this from the More Perfect Union, Matt, about this USPS uh, mailbox? Because this is a story that is not isolated, because this is not the only tactic that Amazon used. We talked about how they were paying people to wear, buttons. Talk about how they were basically making people sit into mandatory instruction sessions where they just pump them up with anti-union propaganda, among other things. This story is pretty exceptional, because what the More Perfect Union has found was that there was this very mysterious mailbox that was put into place on the Amazon property. And it should be said that the NLRB early on said that they weren't going to have an in-person election, which is typical for this kind of move, but they were rather going to do a mail election. Almost immediately when that happened, Amazon started lobbying that the USPS would put a mailbox on Amazon's property. The NLRB said this is illegal, and they said Amazon is not allowed to go through with this, and they also said that the USPS is not allowed to do it. But Amazon continued to pressure the USPS, who initially was saying no, but eventually relented and put on this very mysterious mailbox onto the Amazon property, right? Matt and I were talking, this is something that is illegal. And this is why I'm saying that there should be and will be, I hope, a challenge to this election result if we do not see a yes vote win out, right? Because this is an attempt at intimidation. And more importantly, this is an attempt at surveillance because Amazon wanted to make sure that they saw who was showing up and voting, right? Because if you don't vote, that's an automatic no vote, right? They wanted to make sure that they were seeing who was going in so that they could, one, lobby them, intimidate them, etc. Right? This is something.
Just have that info. It's just nice to know if you're a
Yeah.
boss.
This is something that is absolutely ridiculous. It's terrible, also, that the Postal Service, relented to Amazon. But it's not isolated, as we were talking about with the good fellows at the Valley Labor Report. Amazon also was able to lobby the local government to shorten the length of the red light near the facility because pro-union organizers were showing up in the morning and telling people, hey, this is why being a union is a good thing. Amazon was able to lobby, I can't remember if it was the county or the state, I believe it was the county, to change the timing on that red light so that it became shorter so that that folks would be spoken to when they're in their cars, right? That's just what's happening in the public sphere, right? Where Amazon is a very powerful force, but they're not the ending authority. Imagine what was going on in the workplace for folks.
Yeah. Do you have anything more to say? Because this kind of reminds me of what we were talking about with Paul O'Connell on James Connolly. The whole, the aspiration of basically a worker movement that won't have workers divided and say you'll have USPS doing Amazon a solid and putting ballot box, it's on a ballot box for them. So people should check that out. That was for patrons on Sunday.
The
But
James Connolly conversation, yeah.
yeah, I mean that I guess that's just fresh in my mind. That it seems like, I mean, we're at a point now where we can hear about this and think people will leak stuff to like Ken Klippenstein, but we don't have the point where instead of having to leak it, people can just say to their coworkers, "Hey, this should actually stop," and that's the point we have to get to.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, and thank you, Matt, because that's the shift that people need to understand. I'm painting this picture because the fight against Amazon was a huge fight. Again, we don't know how this is going to turn out. I still have hope and belief that we will get a positive result. And also I have a feeling this is going to go on a lot longer, right? But the point is this: the reason that this movement in Bessemer, Alabama was so exciting was not because we thought that it was a slam dunk, a sure thing, 100% going to happen, but the fact that it is happening. That there are people who are showing up and saying that they want to see something different. And this is spreading from Alabama all the way across the country. People are getting more militant and preparing to take on not just Amazon, but employers across the board. We have this from Chicago. Do we have the video here or the statement?
The statement. Do you want me to read the statement?
Yeah, why don't you do that? Where folks were able to stage a walkout in response to inhumane working conditions that folks have been facing in Chicago.
Yeah, so this is Amazonians United Chicagoland on Facebook. It's been 6 months of this inhumane 1:20 to 11:50 a.m. mega cycle shift, constant speed up and disrespect from management. We have so many stories of our lives being disrupted by Amazon's national change to the mega cycle. So many mothers now struggling to care for their families. So many of us waking up feeling like zombies every day after just a short little nap, pushing ourselves to keep working this shift out of necessity. Today we got fed up and walked out demanding the mega cycle shift, schedule accommodations for people who need it, lift rides to and from work, 2% night shift differential instead of the week 50 cent they give us, and respect for the full 20 minutes paid break. Seems to be a theme with Amazon in those breaks. And then I'll pull up the video as well. 1 second, let me make it a little bit smaller. Here's them. Here's video of this walkout.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the point is serious that this is not going away. From what we saw early in the pandemic with Chris Smalls and many other brave organizers at that facility in Amazon, to what we've seen in in Alabama, to what we're seeing in Chicago, this is continuing, and it's not just going to be limited to warehouse workers. We got a really encouraging result from the NLRB earlier today, which ruled that Amazon illegally fired activist workers who are working in their headquarters in Seattle, who were basically demanding and trying to organize people around the insane carbon emissions that Amazon is responsible for, right? They were found to be fired illegally by Amazon, right? So there is movement that is going on across the board. This is not a fight. This is not a fight that is simple. This is not a fight that is easy. But the only thing that we have and the advantage that we have is our ability to light 1,000 small fires and to take them down. And we can do this, and it is happening. And we have to continue to support one another, to continue to participate in organizations, and to understand this is a long fight. Because if you wear your heart and soul on every single fight and think that if you don't get positive results in every single one, and then become completely demoralized and hopeless, we will lose. But if you understand these are encouraging signs that people are saying no, and that it's going to take a while for us to build the strategy and the movements that are successful, but the movement is happening, the polarization is happening. That's how we're going to win.